It seems that the theme of the opposition team in today's round is that you can have both security and education, and I would agree with that. However, I don't believe that the opposition team's advocation gives you both those things. In this last government speech, I'd like to take a look at some of the key ideas in today's round, point out the flaws in my opponent's thinking, and show you why the government team has indeed deserved your ballot. So first of all, let's take a look at their 4 subpoints to their response on policy. They talked about how we have no mandate, no enforcement, it's hard to enforce, it's hard to find money for, and that we're violating states' rights. And I'd like to group all of these answers. The first response you can tag is greater good. Greater good. Yes, this may be difficult. It may be hard to enforce. It may be hard to find funding. It may be, yes, that we're going against previous legislation, but I believe that doing the greater good is more important than adhering to old sets of rules that don't necessarily need to be upheld. Finding amounts of money or spending an amount of time trying to enforce an important plan. But my second response is that of the gov burden. If you go back to my partner's speech, when she responded to my opponent's resolutional analysis of this being a policy resolution, you'll remember that she tagged it as it doesn't matter, because at the very beginning of my first speech, I stated gov burden, and I said as long as a government team can prove that this action promotes safety, we deserve your ballot. My opponents never responded to that and therefore agreed to it. So as long as at the end of today's debate round, we can prove to you that this is a beneficial action, then we do indeed deserve your ballot. Now let's move on to their response to the idea of lives being saved. This deals a lot with teachers. Now they talked about how there's a slow reaction time when you have people patrolling outside rather than in the classroom. And then they also talked about how threats are inside the classroom. And these are really similar points, so I'd like to clump and respond. My first response you can tag as quality. Quality. A gun does not equal protection. Now they've talked about how they're going to give teachers training. But my question to you is, would you feel safe if your high school teacher had a gun? Remember any geometry teacher from your high school days. They're not the kind of people that you want carrying a gun that you feel or you're going to be protected by. In fact, they talk about trust over and over again. My response to this idea is that you are best able to learn when you feel that you're safe. You cannot feel that you're safe when you don't have professionals protecting you. They quoted something saying, we don't need this military presence on campuses, that this is going to hurt people's ability to learn. My response is that you learn when you're safe. If I have to learn something, I want to make sure I'm not going to be shot in the face before I can. It's a hierarchy of needs. We need to protect our students before we ever try to teach them. Now, let's move on and look at some of my opponent's voting issues and respond to them. They had 3 main ones. The first was dealing with the plan, and I've already responded to this idea. I just want to add one more quick response here, the idea of not springing. My opponents have brought up a lot of technical argumentation about how we didn't provide a specific mandate that we tagged, we didn't specifically provide where the funding's coming from, and so on forth. My response to this is that we're not springing. My opponents have been playing the victim by saying, look, they didn't bring it up till their second speech. We had no way to prepare for this. They're bringing it up after when they should have brought it up at first. My response to this is that we're not springing anything new on my opponents. They knew that going into this round, we're debating whether or not this is a good idea. They had the ability to prepare for that, and simply because we didn't specifically tag it as a mandate does not mean that they have no ability to respond to it. I don't believe that's a fair standard, and I don't believe that we have to adhere to that. And again, go back to the idea of the government burden that they agreed to. As long as we meet that, we deserve your ballot as agreed to by the opposition team. Their second voting issue is that of safety, and they brought up the example of Columbine, and I just want to respond to this once and for all. The idea that the biggest threat comes from inside the classrooms is a simple misnomer. At the beginning of the round, I talked about the preponderance of evidence, that if we can show you in 51% of the cases that we promote safety, then we should win. My opponents have brought up one example of one school in which one student committed an act of violence. That is not a preponderance of evidence. Simply because there was one case in which a threat came from inside a school does not mean that we're not promoting safety by having security guards around. And again, my partner responded to this example showing that the armed security guard did good. In fact, if teachers had been on the spot, they're not trained professionals. Even if they get training, they don't have rigorous experience, they're not qualified, and most entirely, they're not the ones that actually want to be protecting the students. My partner read off evidence saying that they felt that the students would best be protected with armed security officers. Their third voting issue is that of education, and again, I talked about this. The best way to learn is when you're sure you're not going to die within the next 5 minutes. We need better protection, not necessarily a link between the security officers and the students. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at the government team's voting issue, that of best solve harms. Both teams agree this is a problem. We need to protect students, but our team actually provides you with a way to solve that. We give you trained professionals that are paid to do their job, that are going to do their job, and can actually promote safety. With that, we have indeed upheld our government burden and therefore deserve your ballot. Thank you.